Hello everybody, welcome back to the book log. Today I'm talking about This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This book is kind of equal parts beautiful and inscrutable to me. I personally enjoyed it, but I feel like I'm gonna have a sort of difficult time explaining precisely why. It contains some of the most evocative and unique and interesting sci-fi concepts that I've probably ever read, but then there are sections and chapters where I felt like I struggled to fully understand or appreciate what was going on. Despite its short length, this book is surprisingly dense. The prose is incredibly flowery and lyrical, which makes sense considering half the book consists of epistolary love letter exchanges. But even in the more narrative sections, the writing remains very complex, very poetic, very ethereal. It took some getting used to be honest, but I think the style fits very well with this book's immense, resplendent, grand conception of the universe and how time works. The book is structured in such a way that information about all of this is revealed very slowly, but right away the basic facts are clear. There's some type of interdimensional war happening, and the two characters, Red and Blue, have an ongoing secret correspondence with one another despite being agents on opposing sides of this conflict. It's never explicitly clear what the purpose of the war is or what the end goal is for either side, but the roles and abilities of Red and Blue themselves are pretty fascinating. Their purpose in this war is to travel up and down the strands of time, as they're called, influence people and alter events in order to shape history to the aims of their respective sides. So like in one chapter, they'll be doing stuff in an ancient Buddhist temple, and then next they'll be in a futuristic techno-dystopia. Then they'll be on prehistoric Earth with the dinosaurs. Then the next chapter, they'll be in like a regular modern age hospital. Time itself is more or less just another dimension of space to them through which they can traverse freely and easily. It's kind of a whirlwind of a setting, and I think it's wonderfully executed. It's probably one of my favorite components of this whole story. I love the way that it's able to jump from setting to setting, each one so vivid and immersive and colorful. Literally, like the colors of things are described so much in this book. It's really great. This kaleidoscopic interdimensional backdrop is one of the main reasons this book is as effective as it is for me. I think the idea of Red and Blue themselves is also very interesting. Red's faction of the war is called the Agency, which is described as this futuristic, technocratic cyborg society who is interested in controlling time in some precise but otherwise undefined way. Blue's faction is called the Garden, which is the opposite. It's a very organic, natural, universal consciousness type entity that's more chaotic and works to control time by enmeshing their agents into the fabric of time itself to change events from the ground up, so to speak. Red and Blue are portrayed as a sort of yin and yang in this book. They're antitheses to one another or polar opposites, but each one contains a little bit of the other one within them. Blue can be calculated, Red can be tender. And despite being diametrically opposed enemy agents, these two have gone rogue and they are now sending letters back and forth to each other. Every other chapter is a POV perspective of one of the characters doing some time mission, followed by reading a letter left by the other one. They're not letters in like a regular sense, like writing on paper. They're more like coded messages that only the other one is able to interpret, woven into the fabric of their current reality somehow. So like, for example, one of the letters is written into the rings of a centuries-old tree. Like the tree was literally watered in a precise way that over the course of hundreds of years, a letter grew into the flesh of the tree itself. Another letter is somehow coded into lava and ash raining down from a volcanic explosion. One of the letters is somehow in the corpse of a seal, as a stupid pun about seals, like a seal of a letter, which I thought was funny. Because these two are able to move through time freely, they're able to orchestrate these elaborate messages to each other that can take decades to come into fruition. At the beginning of the book, the letters take on a lighthearted, taunting sort of tone. Each one's kind of poking fun at the other one, boasting about their most recent time victory. But as the book progresses, the letters they send become increasingly sincere and heartfelt, and they basically fall in love with each other despite technically being mortal enemies. They end up having this Romeo and Juliet star-crossed forbidden love sort of dynamic, and although some of their correspondences towards the end of the book are these hyper-saccharine professions of love to the point of being pretty much completely removed from the story, I thought the relationship was still rendered in a very touching way. The relationship is the point of the book. After all, it's kind of like the anchor in this incomprehensible labyrinth of infinite time and space, and the point is you don't have to comprehend it because their love transcends all the complexity and the chaos of their surroundings. As a reader who enjoyed the glimpses we got into the strange machinations of this world, I do wish we got a bit more of it in this book, but that's not really what the story was trying to do, and I can appreciate that. At some point in the story, they come to a crossroads where the agency is beginning to suspect something is afoot between these two, and Red is tasked with personally assassinating Blue by creating a letter that is also a poison plant that will kill Blue if she reads it / consumes it. Red begs Blue not to read the letter, but Blue realizes that if she doesn't, the agency will recognize that there's some collusion going on, which would lead to Red's death instead. As a result, Blue consumes the poison letter in order to intentionally sacrifice her life for Red. It's a very sad and powerful moment, but then some time travel hijinks come into play. Red ends up navigating her way backwards through the intricate tangles and knots of time, interacting with previous scenes that have already happened in the book, as well as with a child version of Blue, in order to give Blue immunity to the poison and to pave a path for her to be able to survive. It's a little bit confusing to try to think through it logistically, but it still resonates on an emotional level, I would say, both of them willing to sacrifice everything for one another. To me, the inscrutability of the plot and of the time travel mechanics actually feels pretty deliberate in this book. Unlike a lot of time travel narratives where understanding the time travel rules, if you will, is necessary to grasp the story, here the rules seem intentionally irrelevant. They don't really matter or drive the narrative in any concrete way. For example, there's probably some kind of grandfather paradox going on, but who cares? You're just forced to accept that the nature of time and the universe is bizarre and unknowable and incomprehensible and paradoxical. It's the backdrop rather than the forefront of the story, and I did appreciate that. So when I say this book is both beautiful and inscrutable, I do mean both things in a good way, strangely enough. Everything about this book is so dreamlike and so otherworldly and so lucid and interesting. I love just being lost in this universe, lost in these two characters' exchanges and their chemistry, even if I never actually learned how exactly you lose the time war. I'm going to give this book a solid 8.